So, hello everybody. Welcome to another Epic Double Jump webinar. Today we have Marco Gifuni with us. It feels like Marco worked on all the movies. When I talked to him, he when he started sharing his work with me, it was like, oh yeah, The Matrix, Venom, The Meg, Shazam, Pacific Rim, and the list was just going on and on. So today, Marco will walk us through his personal pipeline and creature design process, while hopefully sharing some great stories from years of working in the industry. Marco, welcome.
Hello, nice to meet you. Yeah, thank you so much for having me, guys. This is great.
Yeah,
Hopefully, it's going to be a nice chat. I'm sure it will.
yeah, I think this is going to be a very cool episode. There's like a lot of practical tips and pro tips and tricks that I think you're going to be showing, like literally behind the scenes, how you work, what you did, in the studios, what kind of projects. I think you can. I think we were discussing this, but you can now share a few things that maybe before you weren't allowed to share because of the whole Technicolor situation that we can potentially
Yeah,
talk about later.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely a topic that it's probably worth touching.
It's a
It was
hot
like a
topic, yeah.
family for me, but yeah, definitely
Yeah.
we can talk about it later. Yeah, we discussed before. And in the promo,
Mm.
today it'll be great to go through creature and character design for concept and production. So hopefully I can share my workflows. So everything concerning texturing, modeling, UV mapping, and reference, the way I gather my reference, the way I build the story, and hopefully try to convey it through the project.
Mm.
So by all means, I have a lot to share. So hopefully you
Yeah.
guys are patient and there's a lot to talk about.
Patient. Yeah, I saw the script. It's quite a lot. I'm
Yeah.
standing right now, but I feel like in a few hours I'm gonna sit back down because it
Yeah.
might it might take a few hours to go through everything.
And absolutely, if you want to interject, guys, if you have questions, comments, we can read them all and
Mhm.
it'll be great to interact as much as possible.
Yeah,
And yeah,
sweet. Well, before we actually jump into the whole demo, we were just before this call we were talking about video games, and I was thinking, have you ever worked on a video game before?
yes, yes, I've been very lucky to work on cinematics for video games,
Mm.
multiple ones. The one that springs to mind was Titanfall 2,
Mm.
um, in a studio that is actually no more. It's been
Mm.
shut down.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Spov,
Mm.
and we basically worked on the cinematics for all the characters. So lots of bots, and I was in charge with rigging and animation of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose that's the bright side of being a 3D generalist. You can basically jump back and forth into disciplines, and it's very, very cool. You don't get bored.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was incredibly fulfilling because in the end, we basically created cinematics that are in fact in the video game. So every time you choose a character, you have a cinematic for that character.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's there. That was an incredibly fulfilling project. Yes,
Mm-hmm. But
yeah,
you did more work, I guess, on the movie side, right? More movies than video games. But
yes.
was there a big difference in workflow,
Oh,
workflow on movie versus?
absolutely, absolutely. I would say in terms of deadlines, which are the most pressing thing, of course, deliveries. The ones for film are much more diluted. So you
Yeah.
have months to do things. For example, they give you a character, it could last for 6 months. Because as we said in our conversations before this, I mean, it's like film, especially, it's like a pyramid, and you
Mm-hmm.
are at the very base of it, the people that do stuff. And obviously, decisions impact you in waves, and you tend to change stuff a lot of times. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you tend to spend a lot of time working on the same asset, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
So you have much more time to refine and detail things in the film projects.
Yeah.
Games seems to be, especially cinematics, seems to be very close to commercial deadlines. So
Yeah.
you got much shorter deadlines to do stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess my experience was actually the opposite, where we had a lot of time when we worked on Gears of War.
Hmm.
Uh, it was like I think a year and a half on that project. It was just like it felt quite liberating that we had that much time to play around, and we also worked on the cinematics for the game, but they were in real time, so it was like still, it wasn't pre-rendered or anything, so it was still very much in the engine, versus working on AAA game cinematics. Those usually had a really short deadline, like 4 to 6 months, but on Gears we had like quite a bit. Granted, there was a lot of in-game cinematics we did on Gears, but it just felt like there was a bit more, it was more chill, you know, because I think the overall it took 3 years to finish that game, or 3 to 4 years. So some games do have like the large kind of production times, but you know, I guess
Gears of War looked incredible, by the way. So
it looked pretty good, yeah.
It's really a benchmark kind of game. Yeah, no, it happened in the past to me as well, working on cinematics, and right at the delivery cut, the client decided to add in-game cinematics with our cinematics. So it wasn't, we basically had to cut them. I remember in Call of Duty Black Ops 4, we had to basically cut our delivery to accommodate the gameplay cinematics, which, I mean, they went really well with the cinematics that we did, but we usually don't use Unreal in cinematics. It's very, very rare. But yeah, absolutely.
Fun times. Well, I think based on your script, I think it might be wise that we just go into your demo, and then we can take questions after the demo, and also portfolio reviews, which also might take some time. So let's just crack on.
Yeah, very much looking forward to Q&A and portfolio reviews. That's going to be great. In the meantime, I wanted to show you some stuff. So this is going to be personal work interspersed with film and commercial projects. Granted, because it's film, I can't show that much. So I'm going to be showing stuff that is probably already out there, and explaining where I was involved, and a little bits and pieces that I had the pleasure to work on. So yeah, let's get started.
Let's do it.
Cool. All right, let me share my screen. Okay. Cool. All right, the first project I wanted to show you is called, very pompous name, but it's called Epiphany of Vengeance. What I wanted to do with this was to represent a deity that was basically floating in the air. And let me dock the window somewhere else. Sorry. 1 second. Yeah. Can you see it now? Is it clear? Yeah. So basically, I had this character in mind for a while. It was just a rough concept, so I had to do a lot of reference gathering and boards, which I will show you later. But I just wanted this deity-like character floating in the air, loads of trinkets, loads of assets, and I want it to be very much like a medieval statue, almost like one of those Italian saints statues. And yeah, hopefully I managed to do that. So yeah, this was modeled in, well, the base mesh was done in Maya and sculpted in ZBrush, clothing in Marvelous Designer, texturing in Substance Painter, UV mapping in Rizom, and a few other things. And the final render was done in Cinema 4D Redshift. And I've modeled some of the trinkets in Cinema 4D as well. So I wanted to show you the ZBrush file for this first. And there we go, in all its glory.
So how do you start this? Like, where is how do you begin? Because this is obviously a finished piece, and it feels like, oh yeah, of course, you know, it's like obvious how this is
super easy.
But do you start with a sphere, or like just simple primitives, or?
That's a very good question. It depends, actually. It depends on the piece. This piece in particular, I started from a thing that is called archetype. So you can find an archetype for female or male models in DAZ, for example. DAZ is a very good program. It's got very good base meshes. The topology is fairly solid, but I tend to change it depending on what I'm doing. In this case, I started from a DAZ model, which I imported in Maya and changed the topology of. Yeah, so the base model was taken from DAZ. And again, it's such a sorry for the nudity, is such a different and mostly kind of setup that it's completely different from the initial model. So I changed a lot of this, and since I wanted it to resemble a painting from Egon Schiele, which I'm going to show you now. So this is my Pure F board, which is a thing I basically often do as a first step when I start my projects. I wanted the character to be fairly bony and skeletal. So the hands had to have that skeleton quality, just like an Egon Schiele kind of painting. And in fact, the hands have that kind of pose, which is abnormal. And I wanted the general silhouette to be fairly contorted as well. Again, just like an Egon Schiele painting. Let me show you the 360 whilst I'm going through the board. There you go. And another thing I wanted to have is, in terms of decorative style, is something that resembled Alphonse Mucha, which is my favorite painter. I'm super lucky to have some works of his as well. I absolutely love him since I was 16. So yeah, basically a lot of trinkets, a lot of jewelry, which is something that I love to add to my characters, a lot of items. And of course, as I said, the shading, I wanted to be like one of those Italian statues from medieval times. So these rays of sunshine behind the head are definitely taken from this statue, which is in the St. Peter's Cathedral in Rome. And I really liked the theme of the Venetian masks, like these, for example. I think is really, really interesting. And yeah, going back to the ZBrush file, that's pretty much what I've done. I concentrated mainly on the face in terms of details, because it was one of the features that was most visible out of the whole body, because the rest was covered in cloth and other items. So yeah, this is what I wanted to be, just like a Venetian mask. Yeah, this is what I usually do. I work in layers when I work on a character, and I tend to just concentrate on tertiary details after I've blocked out the primary and secondary forms. When I'm happy with them, I just try to add as many tertiary details as possible. I don't like just slapping alphas randomly to make it look busy. I concentrate on regions depending on what I want to make stand out in the piece.
When you say slapping alphas, you mean like you have a brush with like an alpha kind of texture, right? And then you kind of add details with that.
Yes, in ZBrush there's this thing of basically alpha textures in brushes. So if you want to have pores, for example, it's very easy to just go there and just have this massive brush that covers the character in alphas. And I don't like to show that the character is so obviously CG and the noise is so obviously the one that you can find randomly on the program. So I want it to be varied and vibrant if I can manage to do so. Yeah. And thank you so much. I wanted to show you another thing. So what I usually do in terms of, creating the piece and progressing is I create a spotlight in ZBrush. A spotlight is basically a collection of references that you can just stock in the program, and you can just have them there for you to consult. For example, for muscles and muscle groups is absolutely vital. In this case, I went for Scott Eaton's Bodies in Motion, which I'm sure everyone is going to be familiar with in here. Yeah, it's basically an amazing archive. How long did it take to make the character? Thank you, Joshua. 1 sec.
5 years. This one is 5 years, but usually it's like 10. Depends how fast you're working, but yeah, 5 to 10 years.
This was, well, pretty much that. Sorry, I was coughing. This took, all in all, I think a couple of months.
Hmm.
And I just go in steps. I don't just jump in and work on every single facet all at once. For example, I just finished the main character first, and then I thought it will be nice to have clothing that is floating in the air. And this is where I started to approach the project from a marvelous designer kind of perspective. So as you can see, the clothing is fairly physically accurate, and that's because I've done it in Marvelous Designer. That allows you to, simulate clothing in possibly the best manner ever. I think just Houdini and CLO 3D are close to that, which is really, really great. Actually, let me show you how I've done this in Marvelous. What I usually do is I export the base geo of the character, so just the lowest subdivision into Marvelous, and I just start working there, and I just start adding stuff. And when I'm happy with the pieces, the single pieces, and the simulation, I just crank up the particle distance, which is basically the segments of the cloth, and yeah, I just take it from there. And Marvelous is amazing because it allows you to have a really good UV mapping for free, basically, because the single pieces that you have in the 2D pattern window are exactly the same ones that you have in the UV editor. So it just cuts out the middleman in terms of UV mapping.
So what happens if you play simulate? Would all the cloth fall down right now, or?
I knew you were going to say that. All right, so let's do that. This is going to be fairly taxing for the GPU. So if the whole thing blows up, it's his fault.
Yeah, it's my
Guys,
fault.
if you're
Yeah,
listening.
sorry, but I know everybody was wondering. It's like, what happens if you simulate it?
Yeah, there are a few things I do. For example, I just get rid of the gravity, which allows me to just move the
just
cloth
paint it.
in the
Yeah.
exactly. So if we, for example, this is fairly intense in terms of geo, but for example, if we just simulate this, it just flops. But since there isn't much gravity, and depending on what material you use, I think this is satin, this silk actually, yeah. Silk is fairly malleable, so if you have it in the air, you can definitely pull it and push it, and when you're happy with it, the cloth just relaxes. And there are measures you can take. For example, if you're happy with the position, you can stop the simulation, decrease the particle distance, then it goes to a fairly base mesh, and then increase it again, and it picks up all the details and creases that you want to have in a physically accurate kind of cloth, piece of cloth. But yeah, this is pretty much the long and short of it. When it comes to pieces like this, I had to make everything elasticated because I wanted that pattern that the clowns have, like in 1900s. So I really like that pattern, and yeah, I just created that cloth based on that.
Sweet.
And hopefully I managed it. And once everything was UV mapped, was simulated and sculpted, etc., I started with a texturing process, which was a bit long in this case because there's a lot to texture and
5
a lot
years,
to
you
shade.
said?
5 years, yeah, definitely.
No,
5 years.
You did say it took like almost 3 months, right? But is this,
Yeah.
would it take as long if you were working in a studio and they give you a task like this, or would that be faster or slower?
Absolutely. I mean, when it comes to a studio environment, first of all, everything is compartmentalized. So it's very unlikely that if you are the character designer, the creature designer, you get to be involved in the texture process. I mean, granted, it happened to me in the past, but depending on the studio and how big it is, you tend to work on one partition of the project of the model and then pass it on to the next department. So yeah, it's very unlikely that you're going to take it, because for this, for example, I did a bit of grooming as well. I don't know if you can see the filaments in the cloth. I did cloth simulation, I did texturing, I did rendering, I did UV mapping, which is very unlikely, and comp as well, which is very unlikely to have for just one designer in a studio environment. So to answer your question, I think in a studio environment, like timings are very diluted. So a piece like this could probably take 5 to 6 months, depending if it's like the main character. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's
I mean,
pretty
the,
much
the
it.
quality of this one is insane. Even the tattoos, how it feels like they've been burned in somehow.
Yeah, that's I went for that. Thank you so much. I can
Yeah.
show you actually. So this is the substance file,
Yeah.
um, which is a bit intricate. One thing I do in my substance files, especially when I work on skin, I have a layer of what I call verdaccio. It's basically a technique that painters like Caravaggio used to use. It's basically the first base of everything, and it's just random color. Verdaccio in Italian is basically born out of the word verde, which is green. So they used to use green just to block out forms, and that green with an overlay on top kind of shines through, and it gives you that this kind of pattern. I don't know if you can see it, but let me go to the in the diffuse it's much more visible. There's a green kind of um, coming through here, and that's because there's a layer on pretty much every character I do. I use this layer called base, which is readaptable. So I just export the smart materials, and it just readapts to the mesh maps of the set of the new character. It's just random colors and noises to mimic veins and the vibrancy of flesh, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot of, it's very detailed. I mean, yeah.
Thank you. I can go
Yeah.
through the tattoos since you mentioned them. Right. Tattoos for all seasons, hands, legs, and I just wanted this sense of they've been like literally burnt out a few seconds prior. So I wanted this reddening around the tattoos, and I created anchors in substance just to basically have the base of the tattoo. So the actual. So which one is this? This is left arm. Okay, let's go to left arm then. So I created anchors to have the base of the tattoo, so the design, and use that design in other layers, which was really, really cool. And it allowed me to have this reddening around the tattoos and ink. But yeah, I mean, this piece is fairly, I would say, I don't know, I wouldn't say complex, but it's got a few things going on. I really enjoy the sculpting of the face and almost this carnification kind of designs in the face. And yeah, that was really, really cool to do, really interesting. And there's another thing I wanted to show you, unless there's something I don't know, you have questions, you want me to address anything.
I mean, if anybody else have questions, let us know. So Eva's going to be popping them on the screen. So everybody that is watching, if you have questions, you can ask them while Marco is showing his stuff. What I would like to see, if you, when you're showing the files, can you actually add some stuff, draw on top of it? Like,
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah, I just want to see how you actually work, like, because obviously looking at this, at least to me, like there's so much detail, there's so many different textures and things and brush strokes, and I'm like, can you just give us like a demo on how do you do it,
For sure. Yeah. First of all, yeah, you mean sculpting and painting the textures
Sure. Yeah.
and things like that. I mean, of course, when it comes to sculpting, if you have a character and you want to sculpt some areas, in this case, for example, I have multiple layers. So there was one layer for the expressions here.
Have you now duplicated that geo on the right, or how does that even work in
No,
ZBrush?
no. This is just in ZBrush. You can basically stamp the geo on the screen. So, for example, if you are talking to a client and you want to show the client
So it
different
was
views of the
same
asset,
geo, different, just the view changed. Okay,
exactly.
because
It's
I was like,
almost like
how?
stamping the geo.
Sure. Okay.
That's your fault because you use Houdini.
Yes, dude. This, yeah,
Join
it
the
look.
dark side of sculpting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to make more of that. Or hello. Yeah, I was reading the message.
Hmm.
Um, you want to do more? You want to make more than one of the same creature? How do you do that? Um, in what way?
Yeah, can you elaborate on that? I'm not sure I
Yeah, if you
understand the
can
question.
expand on that, that would be amazing. Oh, that's a great question. Thank you, Nahom. Do you apply polypaint on ZBrush before your texture in Substance? Sometimes I do, but oftentimes, majority of the times, I don't polypaint. Polypaint, for people not in the know, is basically an option that you have in ZBrush where you can literally paint on top of your model. So if you have a model, you can basically treat it as a texturing pass. The problem with polypaint is that unlike Mari and Substance Painter, doesn't generate any other channel. So you just generate diffuse. You can just
Hmm.
literally paint on the model. Of course, you can paint in black and white and have some roughness and other channels, but in general, just generate diffuse. So what I like to do is just once the model is completely UV mapped, I just jump into Substance Painter. Where is it? There you go. I just jump into Substance Painter and I just start the texturing process from there. It's just because it gives me so much freedom in terms of channels, and that's where the last export is going to come from. These are
Hmm.
the textures that you're going to use in the rendering stages. This is one of the assets, for example, that you can see in the render.
Hmm.
Tiny small fraction of the whole thing, and you spend so much time on it.
Hmm.
um, but yeah, we're going to touch on UV mapping later, but UV mapping is a huge part of this process. I'm a stickler for UV map. It has to be done like properly, and you can tell when it's not. It's just the texture doesn't really gel with the model.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, we're going to touch on that later. Yeah, I mean, to answer your question, how do you paint on stuff? So on ZBrush, you can definitely sculpt and paint at the same time. But in this case, well, like in every other case, when I work on characters, I just have different layers. So I have the freedom to pare back and undo stuff if I want to, because ZBrush gives you the possibility to, for example, if you have a layer and you sculpt stuff on top, if you save them off target, you can paint out details that you sculpted. So yeah, it's basically you have your layer, and if you want to add stuff in here, for example, like a crease, you can go there. And then I have some brushes that I've created, which are customized, like a different clay buildup, which I'm sure if you use ZBrush, you're familiar with. But this one has got a new kind of layer of noise and streak lengths,
Hmm.
just to make it a bit more interesting and blurred out. But yeah, there is so much you can do in terms of sculpting. ZBrush is literally a world of things, and yeah, we're gonna touch on them in the webinar for sure.
Hmm.
Apart from the tattoos, thank you, Raza. Apart from the tattoos, what aspects of the character do you reserve for the texturing phase, or do you add everything during the sculpting phase? Uh, Good question. So in the sculpting phase, not only I usually sculpt primary and secondary forms, I also sculpt the tertiary, and all of that is going to be the displacement map. Now, when I work in production, I generate the displacement map and I just pass it on to whoever is going to render this. But since this was done particularly as a kind of concept um, piece, I basically exported the whole model, so there's no displacement map. This is the Cinema 4D Redshift screen. To answer your question, when it comes to pores, wrinkles, and scratches and wounds, I sculpt them in ZBrush. So I really want to carve almost like an annotation for me to then paint on in Substance Painter later. But for the prominent details, like for example, let me get rid of this guy on the left. For example, this UFC kind of MMA fighter ear. there was no way I could have done that in height and normals in Substance. So of course, when it comes to prominent details and things that have to hold up on camera, even from afar, you have to sculpt them in ZBrush. When it comes to minute details and stains and rust and edge wear and things like this, I'm happy to do those in Substance for sure. Okay. Question. Thank you, Akib. How to pre-visualize this? Is the final image always in your head? Any tips for arranging references? Yeah, absolutely. We briefly touched on that. But what I used for this piece is a thing called PureRef. I'm sure you guys are familiar with it. It's basically a ref board that, first of all, you can have it always on top on your screen. So whatever you do is going to be always on top. It can be transparent or not. But that's a very good tool where you can gather your references and you can literally copy and paste whatever you want from the internet. See, for example, if I have an image here, I can literally right click, copy image and go here, paste, and it pastes it. So it's very, very good, gathering references and things. For this piece, as I said, I'm a big fan of history of art and artists gone by in general. So in this case, I just gathered a few references from Shukalski. If you don't know the sculptor Shukalski, look it up because it's amazing. If you like contorted bodies and anatomy that doesn't really conform to reality, Shukalski, incredible. And then Sorolla, incredible painter. I really liked the dynamism of the cloth, and this is why I wanted to have in the cloth in the project. And then Egon Schiele, as I said. And then for the jewelry, I went for René Lalique jewelries. This guy worked a lot with Alphonse Mucha, which is the other painter I just briefly touched on before. And yeah, this helps me a lot because I'm well aware that you can get stuck when you work on a project if you don't have a sketch, if you don't have a clear idea. I suppose it's very, very hard to progress, and PureRef helps you a lot. And it's free. You don't have to pay for it. You literally go on the website, download the execute file, and you're sorted.
Yeah, I feel like the way you used reference here is like it's the right way of using reference, because these references are not, it's not like one-to-one to your final piece. You
Absolutely.
can definitely, you can feel the influence, but it's not, you were not working from a like a actual sketch, like you said, or like a concept art that you usually would get in a studio, right? But in this case, you were just kind of like jazzing it up, like
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I mean, I like fan art. I do like fan art, but I don't do it because I almost feel like I'm stealing someone's idea and repurposing the same idea for my own projects. So what I usually do is I literally start from scratch. Sometimes I just sketch stuff in ZBrush, which I'm going to show you later. And what comes out of it is oftentimes something I'm not exactly happy with. So this is a pretty much one of the steps in my process. So when I have the full character or asset or whatever I'm working on, I tend to render it without textures and just start sketching and just putting annotations on it. I mean, are we having more jewelry, less jewelry? Do we want the cloth to be wider, scale it up? And obviously from the render, you can tell that it's fairly different from what you're seeing on the screen now, because there were a lot of different amends and annotations that I did throughout the whole process. And that, as you said, when you don't have a sketch, when you don't have a clear initial idea, you don't really just proceeding blindly. You don't really know where you're going to end up. So by all means, have as many refs as you can. And just do yourself a favor. That saves a lot of time. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. All right. So as I said, this is not going to be just about my personal stuff. This is going to be interspersed with film and commercial work, which I've been extremely lucky to work on. And yeah, I wanted to show you some stuff I did for the Meg 2.
Nice.
So the Meg 2 is this amazing film that was released a few months ago, if I remember correctly. And I've been extremely lucky to have been given the main shark, which is called Apex. It's this guy here. Bit of a backstory on this guy. So what I've been told, basically, because we had a concept of the shark, but it's a shark, of course. Everyone knows a shark.
Sure.
It's not. I mean, technically, it's not a shark. It's a megalodon. But this guy had to be super old. It's been around for thousands of years. It comes from prehistorical times. So for that, it's got wounds and scratches that have been around for years and years and years. And imagine years of fighting. I remember I've been told by the VFX supervisor, imagine that he's been scrapping with a giant octopus. So we need to have signs of suckers on the flesh. And we had to look for, again, talking about references, we had to look for references in that respect. So what's going to happen on a fish when it's going to be hit by, I don't know, some kind of rock or sharp object. So I basically spent, long story short, weeks, like literally adding details. And I can clearly remember this scratch here. It just drove me mental because basically this was the result of an anchor just going into this face and being dragged on until it's fin. So he can't see in one eye, and that's the eye that's been damaged by that anchor. And yeah, I'm going to show you a turntable.
You should have just bought a shark and an octopus and let them fight in a tank. That's what I would do. Yeah.
That's it. Absolutely. This lovely turntable was created by my colleague Yannick Lorvo. He's an incredible 3D artist. Never have I met such a 3D generalist before. And the texturing was done by Aidan Meller, incredible texture artist as well.
So in this case, you only did the sculpt, and other people down the pipeline took care of the other stuff.
Yeah, this going back to the fact that it's very unlikely that you're going to do the whole thing by yourself. There is always someone that is going to be obviously inserted in the whole process of creating a character. So yeah, sculpt, base mesh, eyes, teeth was all done by me. Wounds. And then I exported the displacement map and mesh maps. If I remember correctly, I gave curvature, position maps, etc. to Aidan, which used them in Mari to create the texturing. And yeah, this was it. This was a lovely project. And I didn't know at the time, but this made it in the actual poster for the film. So it was a first for me. It was a lot of fun. And probably the most challenging thing on this was the fact that we knew that the director was going to doctor every single aspect of the shark, the megalodon. So I had to basically have everything in one layer in ZBrush. So when they didn't want something, I had to paint them out. And how do you have some? I remember having something like 30 layers, which, I mean, I'm sure if there are a ZBrush designer listening, they can appreciate that. It's a heavy kind of, I mean, just to export the displacement map for this, I remember it took an hour and some change. I remember we had something like 50 UDIMs in total. It was a massive undertaking. But yeah, this was great, a great project to work on. And after I finished the main shark, I got to work on on the base details for the other two sharks. So this is Apex, which is the biggest one of the bunch. And then there's Aiku and this other guy, I don't remember the name of. But yeah, this is what, for example, what I said about the sucker's wounds. I didn't do these. I didn't work on the details of the other two sharks. I just worked on the base details. So paws, little scratches. These are exactly the same in all three. So I was very lucky in that respect. But yeah, the other two sharks are equally great and less rough in terms of damages and wounds, of course. Yeah, this was a great project.
Sweet.
Hey Rosa, apart from the deadline, what are some other differences between games and film when it comes to characters and creatures? Yeah, I would say topology is different. One that springs to mind in games. There are a lot of tries, which are definitely a no-no in film. So it's something you should be avoiding in film, of course. But apart from that, in the pipeline from film is fairly different because you can go as high as you want in terms of um, eye subdivision level. You can always retain the LODs for what you're gonna use in rigging and stuff. But I would say the pipeline for film is a bit more regimented and texturing wise as well. I remember working on Call of Duty Black Ops 4, and I remember the UV mapping was not as precise. Again, I'm not pointing the finger on the gaming industry, but it was not as precise as what we did in film. For this asset, for example, I had to fraction the body in so many pieces, and they had to be symmetrical and perfectly optimized and laid out. And that's a thing I didn't notice in games, but that's my experience of it. I'm sure it depends very much on the studios. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think video games, usually the assets were a bit lower quality because of optimizations and stuff like that. But now, like, I literally just finished playing Spider-Man 2, and there's the quality is getting higher and higher with these games to the point where, like, I mean, there are like other better examples in Spider-Man 2, but yeah, the quality is definitely of the assets and the characters is definitely going up and up, and eventually it's gonna hit the the movie level, but movies do have higher quality usually.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I remember playing The Last of Us and
Oh yeah, that's
I
a good
couldn't
one.
find the fault in it.
Yeah,
The only thing that I remember was a bit off was the scale of the leaves on the ground.
those
There
darn
was
leaves.
it's just being very picky, but that game is perfect. It's just
Yeah,
script, storyline. It's just when you finish it, if you finish it, because it's never ending. It's
yeah.
just you're gonna be heartbroken. It's just it's awful.
So it's
But yeah,
9 out of 10 because the leaves were the wrong scale. That would be your IGN score.
absolutely. That's like now quote me on that. That's 3 stars out of 5. No, but that, again, that's been absolutely pedantic. That game is perfect.
It's great.
It's got the
It's insane.
texturing and even the attention to details.
Hmm.
It's just incredible game. All right. So what do you think? Are we ready for the next personal project?
Sure,
Or
yeah. It depends how many are you planning on going through all of them?
uh, if you have time.
Well,
By the
it's
way,
already
there
it's
was a
50
question.
minutes. Yes, just so you know,
Oh, it's
we're
already 50 minutes. All
50
right.
minutes in. That's why I'm not asking a lot of questions while you're
All
explaining.
right. I'm gonna make it super quick. All right, let me respond to this question. Are studios
Yeah.
migrating more towards Substance Painter? Yes and no. In film, there is a bit of there's not strict use of Mari or Substance Painter. I had to use both in my last film and VFX gig. Again, if you're not familiar with Mari, you can definitely use Substance Painter. Substance Painter is actually catching up to Mari in terms of projection and stuff like this. Mari's been the pinnacle for a while, but now they are catching up to projection, and especially when you do digidoubles, it's equally as good. But I suspect the industry is vibrating a bit more towards substance. Yes, so designer and painter. When I worked on Matrix, we almost never used Mari for assets. We used Mari for digidoubles. And that's because the pipeline for digidoubles is at the moment strictly on Mari. But I wouldn't be surprised if it would just switch to substance in the near future.
Mm.
All right. Next in line, this guy is called yokai, which means demon in Japanese. Don't ask me why I went for that. So here it is. It's a concept I had in mind for a while. It's basically a guy that had dragons around. And yeah, again, I went for a reference board as always, which I'm not going to show you now because I've already bored you to tears with my reference board for the first one. But I wanted to show you other aspects of it. So this guy really has a lot going on in terms of assets and texturing, and I've included a bit of Cinema 4D, and I've used exactly the same technique that I've used in a recent film where I worked on, which I'm going to show you later, which is super, super interesting, and it's going to save you a lot of time. But let me go through the character first. So yeah, it's got a lot of trinkets, a lot of jewelry, as I said, a dagger, which is very similar to the previous character, but it's a different one. I swear I'm not repurposing stuff. But yeah, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with this. The reference board helped me so much. I just wanted to be a demon with anatomical proportions really close to humans. And this, to answer your question from before, Urban, this was started from a sphere. So yeah, I just made it. It's really, really complex to start from a sphere. And that's because that time I really had no idea what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to do a demon kind of guy. But yeah, I had to retopologize this in Maya. And yeah, this is one of the boards I use for the muscles. It's a spotlight. No, this is not a spotlight. This is a Pure F board. And I knew I wanted shoulder pads, which is a feature that you'll see in my work quite often. But I wasn't sure what kind. And in the end, I just went for a random one that I just made up. And as always, the face is like the primary feature in terms of details, which is really, really cool. I really enjoy working on faces. So let me show you the ZBrush file of this guy.
Like, it's so hard to imagine going from a sphere to that final result. You know,
Yeah.
It's such a drastic difference. And because I tried ZBrush, by the way, I tried learning it just because I was like, oh, this could be fun. But it was hard. Like, it does take a lot of dedication and time to get into it. And it's not just learning the program, it's learning to sculpt, which is there are a few. Have you done any live sculpting, like with your hands and
Yes.
clay? Yeah.
I used to do a lot more sketching as well. I do less and less now, but some pieces that you'll see are the result of sketches. But yeah, you're right. ZBrush is absolutely spot on, as you said. It's fairly intricate in terms of layout, but there are things that you can do to optimize the layout. The layout is absolutely customizable. Everything you see can be customized. Everything. And I mean, I'm surprised because you use Houdini, which is basically the most complex program out there. But I mean,
Yeah.
you should drink ZBrush blindfolded. But yeah, ZBrush is different because first of all, it doesn't use pixels; it uses pixels with the O. So it's basically digital clay. It was born like this. When I started using ZBrush in 2006, yeah. It didn't have Dynamesh. Dynamesh is basically what allows you to retopologize things in a click, so or drag. So basically, the topology was that, and the only thing you could do to add details is just go higher and higher in subdivision, which makes it absolutely untenable for the computer. I was working with a laptop when I was a student, so yeah, I totally agree with you. It's not about learning the program. I know people that are absolutely amazing sculptors and they can do absolutely mind-blowing stuff, but their knowledge of their technical knowledge of the program is not necessarily super advanced.
Yeah.
But they can sculpt like very, very well. And of course, it shows. I mean, you can know the program inside out. If you don't have any idea of what you want to do, it will still show that the sculpt is not up to standard, I would say.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree with you that the program it's different. It's a different program. You have to get used to it.
For
But
sure.
yeah, one thing I wanted to touch on is, of course, ZBrush is amazing, but there are things that you can do with other programs that are much better suited and quicker for some stuff. For example, these scales, I've been asked multiple times, how did you do the scales? Because they seem fairly uniform and they go tapering. And there are things you can do in ZBrush. You can use micro mesh, you can use fiber mesh, but once you use these things, you don't have that much control on single scales. So one thing that I did, I used Cinema 4D for this. Cinema 4D is one of my main programs of choice. I use Cinema 4D all the time because I also do motion design. So yeah, I tend to use it for multiple things: animation, motion design, and as well as character making. So what I did with this character is basically I projected a bunch of quills on the dragon, and in Cinema 4D you can create setups that allow you to have full control on the scale of the quills, on how many quills. Oh, thanks, CJ. Sorry, there's a question. Have you done a character you're proud of? We're going to touch on that later. and then the director or supervisor discards it. Yeah, man. Yep. And make some stupid decisions. All right, that's built in. Can we remember that question?
Sure. Yeah.
That's going to be interesting. Thank you so much, by the way. So yeah, I've created this setup to control the quills, and I could control the number of quills, the bend. I have full control on how they behaved on the model. And that's exactly the same setup that I ended up using, not the same one, I had to recreate it in Venom: The Last Dance for the character that I've created that I'm going to show you later. I wasn't lead concept designer or 3D concept designer on that. I was just a 3D designer, lead 3D designer and modeler on the character. I'm going to show you later that. So yeah, this is a nice setup that I've created for the dragons. And again, that allows me to control the number of quills and just project them and have full control on how they taper off on the body of the dragon. And if I want to, I can basically, in Redshift in Cinema 4D, also have control on the, sorry, a bit of cough, have control on the color of the quills. And see, if I add a material and you go to Redshift, let me open the Redshift tab. There's a nice node called Color User Data. Now, you can do this in Maya and Mesh, but Maya and Mesh don't communicate as well with Redshift as Cinema 4D does. So if you have Color User Data, you can use it with Mesh. You're just not going to have the same results. And Mesh is not as controllable as cloners in Cinema 4D are. So if you go to Color User Data and you solo it, you'll see that each quill now has a different color, which means that basically you are in control of the brightness and darkness of the quills, the color of the quills. And I've used it multiple times when, for example, I have tiles and I want them to have a different color just to be more physically accurate. I've used this method loads of times. And you can also feed the Color User Data into a ramp of your choice. For example, if you have a gradient here, we can use the same user data information into the ramp, and that gives us a nice variation in the color of the quills, which is really, really cool. And this is one of the methods that I use. Now, in Venom, I remember I was asked by the supervisor, the UV maps have to be randomized, because otherwise, if you use the same UV map for all the quills, when you texture it, they're going to have the same texture. So another thing I did, which I did in this setup as well, I just randomized the UVs. And what the cloner in Cinema 4D allows you to do is basically to instance the iterations of whatever you're cloning, but you can also randomize the clones. And that's going to give you a nice randomization. So for example, if you export this into ZBrush. So let's make it one mesh. So we have one nice mesh now with GoZ, which is something that I use constantly, GoZ. It just goes back and forth from ZBrush to your application of choice. If we export the quills, there you go. Not only they have polygroups now. Oops, they don't. Let me go back. Let me re-export. Yeah, now they have polygroups. So not only they have polygroups now, so they have information that you can use, say, for example, in Rizom, which can read polygroups from ZBrush and materials from wherever other program you choose, but they're also randomized in the UV map. So if you go here to Morph UV, you'll see that you basically go in the same UV that we created, and they're randomized, so they're not the same UV island. And this was vital for the character I'm going to show you later, because he had to look completely random. I mean, the texture had to look completely brand new in each quill, and it was really, really cool to work on. I'm going to show you that later. So yeah, this is another one of my characters. Are we doing on time? Are we an hour?
1 hour.
All right. Shall I go a bit faster?
Speed it up, 1.5 speed.
All right. Another thing I wanted to show you before we jump on the UV mapping stuff is how I do jewelry. I add a lot of trinkets, as I said, a lot of jewelry, a lot of moving parts in my characters. Yeah, when it comes to necklaces and bracelets, which are almost a constant in the characters I create, I tend to use almost the same setup every time. So I basically import let me close ZBrush so we can have the character docs.
What do you use as a final render program? Is it in Cinema or?
It depends. Sometimes I use Maya to render Maya in Arnold or Maya in Redshift. Some characters I'm going to show you, hopefully, if we have time, have been created in Maya and Arnold or Cinema 4D and Arnold. But most of the time I'm using Redshift because it's much faster, super fast, and Cinema 4D can cope with a huge amount of polygons. I oftentimes don't even export displacement. I just export the 5 million polygon model from ZBrush, and Cinema 4D still renders it, which is incredibly quick in terms of workflow. You don't have to spend time re-exporting it every time you sculpt new details. So yeah, when it comes to necklaces, for example, I have this little setup in Cinema 4D. If you use Cinema 4D, this won't sound as a huge shock, but basically I use a spline. I just wrap it around the body roughly. It doesn't have to be super precise. And I just add a rope tag, which basically, when in simulation process, it makes everything behave as a swinging rope kind of thing. And then I add a collider tag to the character. And that's about it. All I do is just press play, and there you go. So the spline just folds flush to the body of the character. You can choose the length of it. If you're up to something really long, like in this case, you can go all the way through. You can go shorter. And when I'm happy with it, all I do is basically stop the process and then right-click, go to current state of the object. So we have the object in its current state that we've chosen. Go to frame 0. And now we can use this as a base for scattering objects on it, just like a proper necklace. So obviously we want to add a bit of thickness to it and a radius with a circle. We'll just go 0.2. So we can scatter objects with a simple method in Cinema 4D's cloner. Again, you just create a couple of trinkets, and we can tell the cloner use the necklace as a base, and let's see what happens. So you turn on the cloner, and there you go. So all the objects you have, just like in this case, are scattered correctly on the spline. And you can fashion it as much as you want. You can, for example, if you want this part of the spline to have a bigger scale in terms of diameter, you can pop in an effector, plane effector, and just turn off position and just turn on scale and uniform and just go really big so you can see it. And in the effectors, you can use a field. In this case, I want to go for spherical field, like so. And field basically allows you to have a regional impact on the cloner. So it's just going to be in portions. It's not going to affect the whole cloner, which is really, really great. And yeah, there are other methods you can use to just avoid intersections. You can use a push apart effector. But yeah, this is what I use oftentimes, and it's great.
Yeah, I like how you're using these almost like MoGraph type of things
Yeah.
in cinema for, you can just repurpose tools for different
Absolutely.
objectives and tasks. Yeah.
Yeah, as I said, I'm very lucky to do motion design as well. So I tend to bounce on and off the motion design field and creature and concept. And Cinema 4D serve me very well because it's got so many tools that you can use in conjunction with ZBrush, because ZBrush is now in the Maxon family as well. Yeah. And another thing that I want to touch on, and I'm being super fast because I'm aware of time, but another thing is UV mapping. UV mapping is super
Boring.
paramount when you work on.
You wanted to say boring, right?
I want to say the method I'm going to show you is probably not, but in general, UV mapping and retopology qualify as the most boring things you can do. You heard it from me first. Anyway, yes, obviously UV mapping is super important when you do production in both video games and film. People are super picky. The UV map has to be done correctly. I remember sometimes we were in an awful rush, and we know that the UV mapping is not being done correctly in that particular film, which I'm not going to disclose, but it happens. I just wanted to show you a really quick method of UV mapping stuff, and hopefully a program that you're going to fall in love as much as I did with. It's called Rizom UV. I'm pretty sure you guys know it, and some of you know it as Unfold 3D. So it's been changed in latest times. So basically, I use Rizom, and I've used Rizom in film productions multiple times for the Meg, for Matrix. It's a lifesaver because it just UV maps stuff so fast, and not even Maya can cope with it, and Cinema 4D either. As amazing as they are, and I use them all the time and every day, they're not as good as Rizom is when it comes to UV mapping, because Rizom is a standalone program for UV mapping. It just does that and a few other things, but it's really great. So for example, when it comes to projects like this, there is an amount of assets that it will be super boring and super difficult to UV map otherwise in Maya and other programs. So you need something that batch UV maps stuff and really quickly. So for example, let's pretend we have a bunch of coins. I've done a coins animation here, fall to the ground. Not many informations we've got for this. We just have meshes falling to the ground in an alembic form. We don't have a material, we don't have a selection tag, we don't have a UV map, but we have to UV map to the best of our abilities these assets, because they have to go in a film and they're going to be really close to camera, so they have to be really precisely UV mapped. So one thing you can do is use a function called topocopy in Rizom. One second. What topocopy allows you to do is basically to group and select single meshes that have the same poly count and the same mesh. So you don't need to UV map them one by one, but you can also UV map them in batches. Now, the cool thing of Rizom is that obviously Maya and Cinema 4D do similar things, but they don't do it as quick as Rizom, and they don't cope with the same amount of polygons and assets in the same way. So Rizom is very good at not crushing with the same amount of assets and polygons. So for example, let's pick the most difficult one. Let's see, this one's a bit problematic, is it? So you can select one, Alt-C, and it selects all the other ones that are the same. By the way, we have 130 objects in total, so it's pretty big scene in terms of poly count. So it's going to select all the other objects that are similar to that. You can isolate that, and we go into the 2D scene, and we can select them all and type P for packing operations. So what that does, it packs it in the 2D scene. Now, Rizom allows you to have an orbit option as well, so you see, even in the 2D window, you see it really clear, and you can move around and see if there are any artifacts. Right, so let's UV map one coin. So 2 cuts, 1 horizontal, 1 vertical, like so. Type C to cut, hover over the object, type U, and you'll see that this UV island has been unwrapped. We don't really like it unwrapped like this, so we can select it, rectangularize it so it's properly unwrapped. And we can scale it down so it kind of fits in the UV. Might just put it there. Right, so we have one coin unwrapped correctly, checkerboard works. Let me get rid of the distortion. And now we want to apply the same UV mapping to all the other coins. In Maya, it would be slightly difficult and it wouldn't be as quick. But in Rizom, you just have to basically select one, go to Topocopy, click this button, wait a few seconds, bam, done. So all the other UV islands are unwrapped in the exact same fashion, exact same textile density. So this is 19 point, da, 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 da. If you select this, 19 point, da, 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 same textile density. So if you want to pack, the only thing you have to do is just hover over your UDIM and type P. Done. So as I say, every time I teach Rizom to people, I just say, you need 4 commands. You don't need to learn the whole program. You just need cut, weld, unwrap, and packing. That's all you need. Obviously, if you want to go more into depth, absolutely. But Rizom is just amazing for that. So I made it slightly slower, but if we were to do it in real time, this will take literally seconds. And it's great. This is what I use for my production work and my personal stuff.
Yeah, I always found UVing, I wouldn't say a pain in the ass, but just slightly boring. It's that task where I'm always like, oh, this should be just automized. Like, where's the auto UV button? But obviously I do effects, so it's a bit different to the precision that you need. Yeah,
I have very good news for you. There's Rizom for Houdini as well.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. You have to download the game development asset, lock it on your shelf, and you have 2 nodes basically. It's not obviously as varied as Rizom is, because Rizom is standalone, but it's very, very good. I'm fully converted, but yeah, I totally hear you. UV mapping is like pulling teeth.
It totally can be.
Yeah. Now, the good thing of Rizom is that it's very, very good at reading other programs' data. So, for example, if you create something in ZBrush, you most likely have polygroups. So you can go in the standard selection tools, click on this tab, and this tab is going to tell you what's been assigned to the asset, what polygroups do you have. And once you have the polygroups, you can basically create groups in Rizom. Let me click this, for example. This is one of the polygroups I had. Once you have polygroups, you can create groups in Rizom and create, for example, a color ID map, which you can use in Nuke or After Effects or Redshift with a color splitter, so you can have different masks. So we have created our groups, and if you want to create a color ID map, you go to this tab here, click color ID map, and click island groups. Oops, sorry, we have to select everything. Island groups, and then Rizom is just calculating stuff. It's going to create a color ID map for you that you can use in other programs and export it. And it's just great. It's just such a good instrument. I use it all the time for production things, and it exports it. Control N, and then you have your color ID map.
Wow,
So
that is actually useful. Yeah, that's great.
yeah, it's very useful.
I should have started using this sooner.
It will take, I'm not joking, it will take probably a day and a half to learn the whole program. And the new version of Rizom has so many new features that will speed up. It's all, I mean, it's everything about speeding up the process, isn't it? I understand that it will take brain power to learn stuff, but Rizom is super easy to learn. Really, really super easy. Yeah. If you guys have any questions, if you're bored of me talking about stuff.
I think there were a few. Maybe Eva, if you pulled them up.
Otherwise, I can jump on the next project. What was the most difficult thing for you, Marco, when you started? Great question. Thank you, Gabriel. Tool, I'll be able to visualize the concept because, as you said, it's not just about knowing how to mesh it. Absolutely. So if you mean when I started the project, it always starts with an idea, a rough concept that I have in mind, which usually stems from artists I check online. As I always say, the artists I'm a real fan of are all dead. So the ones that I use for one of my concepts that I showed you before, Alphonse Mucha, Egon Schiele, they are from the 1900s, of course. So I'm a big fan of museums as well, and I love art. So I suppose what stems from that is a rough concept that I tend to develop and then put on screen and sculpt and create characters from. So yeah, that's probably the hardest part. And then yeah, Gabriel, as you said, in conjunction with that, you have to be up to date with programs and softwares and things like this, which is not always easy. It takes time, and yeah, but just, I mean, what I always say is enjoy the process, because if it becomes a burden, it becomes much more difficult, and the final project is gonna obviously show that. I understand that we have to pay the bills with what we do, but it's very, very important to be creative in your own right, I think. Yeah. Have you done a character you're proud of, and then the director or supervisor? Oh, that's that question. All right, and then the director or supervisor discard it and make some stupid decisions that take your design to a totally hideous or just bad result. Dang. All right. Thanks, CJ. Of course, I can't go. I can't name names, but it happens all the time, like literally every time when you work on a project and you spend a whole, I'm sure Urban, you have stories for days about this.
I do, which I also cannot talk about, but yes,
we talked about this in private. It happens every single project. So you do something you spend hours on, even after work, even in the weekends, because you're so passionate about what you do. You're so enamored with the project. You're like, this is going to be seen by millions of people. I just want to give the best rendition I can possibly give. And then on Monday, you go in the Zoom call and one random guy says, I don't like that. And then you spend a week on that. And everything comes crashing down. Now, when you work on professional setups, you need to be fairly thick-skinned. So to answer your question, CJ, yes, it did happen. It happens literally every time. There's not one time that it doesn't happen. And all you can think of is, this would have been so much better if we did, not because I did it, because it happens to my colleagues as well. And I'm very, very fortunate to work with people that are extremely good at what they do, like to the point that they are the best in the industry. And sometimes they have to bend the knee to situations or hierarchy or producers or people that just have a bigger saying than you. again, you have to imagine production and VFX and commercial work as a pyramid.
Hmm.
So the people that do the stuff are oftentimes at the lower levels, not in hierarchical terms or moral terms, but in terms of how we do the things we do. So there's tiers to, for example, film or commercial. It's not just, see, I've done this, just take it and put it on TV. It doesn't unfortunately work like that. But yeah, the main decisions are always taken by third parties that oftentimes you're never going to meet. And possibly sometimes have less knowledge than you on the topic. Because if you are fortunate to do this day in and day out and work on this field, you probably know your stuff. You probably have spent a considerable amount of hours doing what you do. Um, so yeah, unfortunately, it does happen. Yes,
Yeah, that's why a lot of people start their own studios, or they do personal work as a result of that.
absolutely. That's
Yeah.
that's a great point. Why do I have so many monsters in my portfolio?
'Cause
It's not because I'm mad. It's just because this balances me out. If I
yeah,
didn't do personal stuff, I would be dead inside. Because
yeah.
especially if you're a freelancer, you tend to jump from project to project to project to project, and it's never ending.
Mm,
So if you are going to take anything from this chat, is please do personal work, because that's what will get you in the industry,
hmm.
because that's what's going to show when you work on your own, how are you going to work? What's your product? Are you good at doing topology? Are you good at doing sculpting? What's your UV mapping? So you need to be able to be a vital member of a studio in your own right, independently from the studio. I mean, it's amazing to work on in massive productions. It's amazing to work on Star Wars. All want to work on Star Wars, but you have to think that people that work on these projects have put hours and hours in their own room, in their own house, and you can't really see the goal because there's thousands of us, and not everyone is lucky to work on a big budget project. You just have to do that leap and say, okay, I wanna beat that guy. I want to put the hours in. I want to learn an extra thing. You're a creature design. I love doing creatures. But I also do motion design. I do animation. I do texturing. I do grooming, which is something that's not really required of me because especially if the closer you go to VFX for film, the more compartmentalized it is.
Hmm.
If you do sculpting, it's very unlikely you're ever going to do grooming. If you do
Hmm.
sculpting, it's very unlikely you're ever going to do comp. But it's interesting to see that, and this is why I think Houdini Designer are the most coveted in the market, because Houdini is such a toolbox that gives you the possibility to do this topology, UV mapping, animation, particles. There is so many things that you can do with just one tool, and this
Hmm.
is why there is always a need of a FX designer because they can touch different fields. But yeah, be a vital member of a studio in your own right. Be important because again, this is amazing. It's creative. It's super romantic. I love it. But at the end of the day, you have to pay the bills with this. You have to be able to pay the bills and be that person that can really give a project an extra oomph. This is what I think.
Dude, I agree so much. Like I, when I was in working at Access, I was an FX artist, but
Hmm.
because I have a quite an extensive background in cinematography, like live action cinematography, I was always commenting on the cameras and like just giving feedback on blocking and stuff like that, and just general directing tips.
Hmm.
So they started pulling me into meetings with directors, or meetings when with editors. And slowly they were like, "Oh, do you actually want to supervise this project for Blizzard and be a layout supervisor?" And I was like, "Oh, heck yeah!" But I don't know how to use Maya. And they're like, "Oh, don't worry, you're just gonna be supervising animators." But what I did, I learned Maya because I wanted to start tweaking things. I was like, no, I'm gonna animate cameras in Maya because that's where where the pipeline was. So I was learning things that were necessary so I could make a bigger impact.
Absolutely.
And once the studio or your leads and supervisors, they see that, they're gonna keep pushing you. They're gonna keep putting you in places where you places where you can then grow. But you do need to show that initiative as well. But that's like, if you're an artist, that's like just a natural kind of progression. I feel like everybody, that's how you progress. You need to be super hungry to learn and just go outside of the comfort zone.
Absolutely. And I mean, personally, again, between me, you, and the 80 people that are looking at us in this very moment, I tend to get bored with stuff.
Yes, sure, me too. Yeah.
Exactly. This is a common thing. So I wouldn't want to do characters every day of my life. I'd like to be involved in other fields. I like to be involved in the concept stages. And this is why I suppose I loved being at DNEG so much, because we were allowed to be in the concept design department. We were allowed to do previs. I personally did previs for Matrix. They literally gave me assets that they didn't even have the faintest idea how they would work. They just said, can you try and make this thing work, and let's take it from there. So you end up doing animation, you end up doing all sorts of stuff, which is really, really great. And it's a nice break from the monotony of repeating the same task every day. And again, everyone's got their forte, everyone likes doing that particular thing, but I think it's nice to have a variety for sure.
Yeah. There was one question before. This one, yeah. That.
So, will Double Jump create courses with Marco? Is that something we can disclose? I don't know.
It's
a double jump. So.
It's a potential future, indeed. I mean, we'll see, right? I mean, obviously, in a perfect world, yes. Depends on the support we're gonna get from you guys, and if this is a workshop that people want and need, and if that's a yes, then of course, if Marco's on board, we can for sure do it. I think a course from you would be super valuable to the industry, just because of your wealth of knowledge that you can bring. And I don't know, I think it's cool giving back, everything you learned, and then you pass the torch to other people, and then they get better. And then that's how we all evolve as humans, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I totally agree. We can definitely see if the stars will align, and I'll be super, super glad. Absolutely. Cool. There's another little project I wanted to show to you, since we talked about quills and things generated in Cinema 4D. So I've been super, super, super lucky to work on one of the characters of Venom: The Last Dance. I was not involved in the concept stages of this character, which had so many stages. I was involved in the actual sculpting and modeling of the whole thing that you see on screen. So I basically sculpted the model, UV mapped it, modeled it, and this was the most complex thing I had my hands on. It's just, I literally have nightmares about it. And that's because it was a pleasure, of course. That's because it's such a complex character. It's got 3 tails, 8 legs, if I remember correctly. It's got 2 sets of jaws in the sides, so just like a scorpion. The concept was, and the model was initially created by a colleague of mine, and there are so many people involved. And I was given the model, and I basically had to remodel and redesign some parts of the model, like the legs and the tail, which were just roughly sketched out, and the sets of arms that was on his chest. There were regions of this model that had to be redesigned as per director and supervisor requests. And one of the things I could apply Cinema 4D to were the quills. So basically, as I said, these were very specific. I had to touch just some regions of the model. So I could create this setup for the quills in Cinema 4D, which was really, really great. It was such a time saver. And again, as I said, you can choose to just paint the regions on the model. And for example, if you go on the mesh, this is the base mesh of the character. On the xenophage, if we had one leg, we could paint informations on the leg and just tell the selection tag, update it, and the selection tag updates it in real time, and you have new quills ready to go on your, oh, sorry, let me undo this because there you go, the cloner is there now. So if you have a selection tag, you can update the selection, say we want quills here, click update, and there you go, you have new quills ready for you. And I knew this was the best method because I knew, as I said, in film, there's a lot of back and forth, and a lot of people are asking a lot of changes. So you have to be ready to almost respond on the fly. Yes, the timings are diluted. You have a lot more time. I remember for the teeth of the character, I had 24 days just for the teeth, which is a lot of time. And I remember doing this board with 9 sets of teeth, serrated, etc. And the director literally, the VFX supervisor literally picked and choose the ones he wanted to go for, and then we placed them in ZBrush. But yeah, I've been extremely lucky to work on this film. To this day, is the most complex character I've ever worked on. I remember the tail was the most complex feature. I had to model it in ZBrush, and the tail had to work as a unicorn as well. So it goes back together. The character is constantly moving, so I'm not sure if you can see it, but it goes back together and then splits in 3. So it has to work in both ways, basically. So it had to be believable as a tail split in 3, and even the consistency of it had to be the same when it was split in 3 and in 1, because the other 2 basically go towards the bottom of it. Yeah, this was very, very hard to do. I remember I had to rig the tail in Cinema 4D because I had to show the supervisor how this worked. So I rigged the tail in Cinema 4D and just assigned red, green, and blue to each tail. And basically, I just did an animation of the tail flapping around. But yeah, at the end of the tail, there are 3 hooks, which you probably can see there. The problematic of this character is that it's constantly moving. So it never stands still. So even doing screen grabs for the portfolio is absolutely difficult. But yeah, it was a lot of fun to do, a lot of fun. And there were a lot of people involved. And yeah, this was my
Looks
part
great.
in it.
It is funny that you say that the most difficult thing was the tails, and you can barely spot them in the movie because the creature is moving so much.
Yeah.
And I think we had this conversation before where it's like, I kind of miss the good old days where they would pause a bit. You know, like I remember the T-Rex in Jurassic Park. It's like slow. Camera is freaking almost locked.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the dinosaur just does his thing. It's very poetic and you can see it. Where here it's like just freaking all over the
Absolutely. And everything is moving. There's a conveyor belt of teeth in its mouth.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I haven't touched, actually. I did the teeth for the conveyor belt, but I didn't do the animation of the setup. That's Houdini, of course.
Yeah.
We had some amazing Houdini artists in the team. But yeah, you're absolutely spot on. I mean, it's constantly moving, and when it's not moving, it's screaming. So when it's screaming, there's motion blur and depth of field and heat distortion to the camera. So you don't see. I don't know if you noticed when he screams, there's heat and distortion in the camera. So
everything.
There's everything, and he's got lava going on. It's incredible.
Yeah, it looks great, but I do feel like he would be more scary if he was standing still a bit instead of just being pure chaos. Because if everything is moving all the time, then nothing is moving, you know, because you do need that contrast.
Yeah. And there's so much that you can't clock in this character. Like the nuances of the skin and the bones, and there's a really nice muscle simulation that the guys in rigging did.
See, that's what I'm saying. You can barely see it, right? Because it's moving so much with motion blur and it's invisible. But I'm sure there was a lot of work that went into it. Yeah.
Yes, it was incredible to work on. It took an enormous amount of patience from multiple people, yours truly included. But yeah, I'm so proud of this. It's one of the things I like to really reminisce.
I need to watch the movie. I need
to
watch it.
Please do. It's very nice if you're into monsters. Okay, if there's another question, or how should we proceed? What do you think, Urban?
Well, we are 1 hour and 36 minutes in. It depends how we could potentially split this webinar into 2 parts if you had, because I don't know how much more you were planning on showing.
A lot.
Yeah.
You want, I can show you one other thing, and then we can jump into portfolio reviews and Q&A.
I think so, yeah.
And I can respond to this question. Sorry, I didn't manage to read it properly, Eva. Thank you so much. Characters are usually high poly meshes, and to work with them properly, I usually decimate them, leading to bad mesh. So is there any tips to overcome that? Can we UV unwrap bad poly mesh? Thank you, Joshua. All right, so I don't do decimation master very often. I usually use decimation master when I have something incredibly high poly that is so far away from camera that you don't really see it up close. Decimation master, for people that don't know, is basically this plugin in ZBrush that allows you to I just spoiled the new character. All right. Allows you to take a mesh and basically destroy the topology, but crunch down the number of polygons to a super low percentage. I'm talking 20%, 10%, 5%. It still holds up, and the details are still there. Now, in production and concept, I would say we never use decimation master. In concept, you can use it because you don't really see it if something is shaded properly, although there are triangles everywhere in decimation master. But in production, we never use decimation master. In production, usually we have a thing called LOD, which stands for level of detail. And in some studios, you have different levels of LOD. The lowest one is usually called LOD 100, and the highest one is called LOD 500. Now, 500 can go to 5 to 10 million polygons. Go crazy with it. It can be Dynamesh. It's just literally something that is used for close-ups, or I mean, rarely used on camera, but just in case you have it, this is the highest resolution mesh. So you literally delete the lower count of the subdivision, just keep the higher. That's LOD 500. Depending on the studio, this is called differently though. LOD 100 is basically the lowest subdivision of your mesh. So for example, this guy here, let's go to the lowest subdivision mesh, and it can vary, of course, but this is my LOD 100, and this is already too high, but this was a concept, so I can afford to go super high. In fact, I remember I had added 2 subdivision for the lower mesh. I just deleted them because I didn't need them. I just wanted to go as high as possible because Cinema 4D allows you to do that. But LOD 100 is the lowest resolution mesh. Now, when it comes to your model, please, I don't decimate it because that destroys the mesh. But once you decimate it, it's impossible to UV map because now you don't have cuts you can use from the model. You don't have clear edge loops. You basically destroy everything. Whilst if you keep quads, which is usually what needs to be done, you need to use that for the UV map. Now, granted, you can do the inverse. You can keep quads, UV map it, go as high as you want, and then when you're happy with it, just delete the lower and the higher resolution. If you are in the higher subdivision, you don't need to delete the higher because there's nothing higher than that. Go to Z plugin, pre-process current, and then decimate it. And then you need to tick, obviously, keep UVs. and that's going to keep the UVs in the model, but decimate the topology. So you're going to destroy the topology, all triangles all the way. You're going to keep the details, but you're also going to keep the UV map. So that means that if you have UV mapped the base mesh, which was in quads, and textured it, the texture is still going to work in the decimated version. Never UV map a decimated mesh. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. I'm sure there's different schools of thought, but in general, in production, you never UV map a decimated mesh, or very seldomly. I've never used a decimated mesh in production. So I suspect in games you do use decimated meshes, but that's the final stage after you UV mapped the quads and textured the quads. You can possibly have an LOD that contains decimated mesh, but in general, we don't really do it in production. Sorry for the long-winded response, but yeah, it's just to be as precise as possible. All right, I just wanted to show you this, and then we can jump into Q&A time and portfolio reviews. How does that sound?
Sounds great.
Right? Cool. Yeah. All right, so this is a concept that, talking about concepts, stemmed from a Norman Rockwell painting. If you're not familiar with Norman Rockwell, shame on you, but look him up. He's amazing. He died a few years ago. But basically, Norman Rockwell created this lovely painting for the Literary Digest that is called The Toy Maker. So I love this setup. I love the fact that there was this, shop with loads of assets. I really love the warmth of it. I really love the character, like kind of welcoming you in the shop. And I really wanted to do something that was cluttered. I had a lot of assets which is a theme in my projects. There's a lot going on, I suppose. But yeah, for this one, I basically gathered references for toys, and I wanted to be toys from the past, not fairly recent ones. So I went for old trains and dice and wooden horses and nutcrackers, etc. And this is the result. Let's go to renders. There you go. This is the guy in all his glory. I ended up doing a goblin-esque kind of creature because I really liked it. I never did a goblin character. And yeah, that's to respond to the previous question. I tend to come up with my own concepts, so I don't really do that much fan art, although I'm pretty sure sooner or later I'll do something. But yeah, this is one of the concepts I'm most close to, and I loved every second of it. There's a lot going on. And
what's the story behind the 2 hearts pinned on his chest?
I don't want to be cheesy, but there isn't really. I imagine me and my girlfriend. There you go.
I knew it.
But there wasn't really, because she's going to see this, so she's going to be like, oh. But there wasn't really a strong concept on that. I just knew that the concept had to be cluttered. For example, I've imagined, and don't ask me why. In my projects, there are a lot of Easter eggs, like a lot. For example, this is a train wreck. So this guy is dead, and there's paint dripping over and dripping here.
Oh, okay.
This, for example, for the people in the chat, there are fans of Alphonse Mucha. This is a sketch from Alphonse Mucha that I own.
He's dead.
Yes, he died in 1932.
That's a requirement.
Yeah, if they're not dead, we don't like them, mate.
So
we don't want recent people. But yeah, apart from that, jokes aside, yeah, this is a sketch from Alphonse Mucha, which I'm very proud to own. I own the original of that, and I just use it as because I imagine this guy obviously creates toys, so he needs to have sketches and stuff. And yeah, you can find it in the document decoratives. They're called. It's a book from Alphonse Mucha, which is really, really great. And yeah, there are loads of other Easter eggs in my work. And yeah, I wanted to show you a few files. So this is a thing that I always do in my work. So since I go through and through the progress every time and I'm never happy with it, I tend to screen grab and create loads of whips, which I can go back and forth with. And I end up with more than 60, 70 whips every time. So every time I have basically whips for every project I do. In this case, I add a lot of references as well. So I have a big reference board, especially for the hands. I have photos of me basically doing this, and the hands you see in the model are my hands. My hands are less wrinkly, of course, but yeah, I just went to town with details, and yeah, this is the whip video, which I have almost every project I do. And yeah, there's a lot going on. A lot of setups I've created for the eyes, for example. I use the same setup every time, which is based on a sculpt I did in ZBrush, and then I transpose the file into Substance Painter. So it's got a lot of layers. I can choose the shape of the retina, the shape of the iris, so I'm in full control. And for this, I did the grooming as well. So there's a bit of grooming. As I said, it's nice to jump back and forth in different disciplines and just touch on different aspects of the project. So you can really call it yours. It's really, really interesting, I think. And the clothing was done in Marvelous Designer, and the texturing was done in Substance Painter and Substance Designer. There are things that have been scrapped on this. Like I wanted to have a wall initially behind it, so I created this material in Substance Designer, which I can show you. You'll love that because it's full of nodes and stuff, and I know how much you love nodes.
Oh yeah, it has to have a node, otherwise
yeah,
I'm not interested.
exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was the Substance Painter side of things, and there are a lot of trinkets in this one as well. And yeah, this took a bit more than expected because I had a project in between, so I didn't have much time to do personal stuff as such. But yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's so inspiring and almost like crazy in a way how much attention to detail you put into this, and then how much knowledge and skill you need to execute this. You know,
Thank
like
you. It means a lot.
Because I'm thinking, I'm like, I want to do something like this. I want to learn this. And then I'm like, oh, it's like years and years. And just like you really need to be into it, you know, like you need to really appreciate everything like you are, right? You appreciate art. You only the dead ones, but still, right?
Yeah.
It's
yeah, absolutely.
Really, it's like so many different things that you need to be good at. You really are like a true artist, combining all of these art forms into this.
Thank you.
It's super inspiring.
Means a lot. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's just that yeah, Houdini must be exactly the same, and the disciplines you touch on are exactly the same. You need to kind of inform yourself. What's the standard? What are we going to do? How is this working? And there's a lot of research in that as well.
Yeah.
You kind of need to be enamored on the stuff you basically work on. You need to spend a bit of time informing yourself. And again, I don't see this as a burden. I really love spending time and looking up stuff and seeing what, I mean, to be honest, again, full disclosure, I'm never happy with the stuff I do. So I'm my worst enemy when it comes to work. And obviously, everyone is. I've never met a designer that says, "Oh, this is amazing. You need to see
I'm
this."
good. Yeah, trust me, I'm good. This is
exactly. And those are the people you need to be wary of. If you don't like it, you probably are a good designer. But yeah, again, it's just at the bottom of it, there is an intense love and liking of what you're doing. I mean, I love our job. I really love. I think it's one of the best jobs in the world. I can't believe I get paid to do monsters. This is a thing that is a recurring theme. I keep repeating. The 18-year-old me would be absolutely chuffed to do what I do. and pay the bills doing dragons and robots. It's just, I mean, this is a 5-year-old dream.
Yeah.
And this is why I'm not a fan of generative AI. I just snuck it in there.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
was waiting when AI is gonna enter the chat.
hey, listen, I'm sure someone is going to mention it, so we might just, yeah, talk about it. But yeah, no, jokes aside, I really, really love our job, and I really love the fact that I'm part of a community as well. Oh, hi, Nick. Nick is a colleague of mine. It's an
Yeah.
amazing artist as well. Yes,
Nice.
an amazing motion designer. We worked together for years on projects like Pacific Rim and Ghost in the Shell, and he's just amazing. Okay, so do you generally write up something about your characters before you create them, like some sort of backstory to help you build them out? Yes. Um, Oftentimes, I tend to find concepts that are really interesting, so I develop them, writing stuff down. I have a folder on my mobile phone that if it gets discovered, I could probably go to jail, because it's just jumbled up ideas um, of things that just pop in your mind. I'm sure everyone has something of that sort, because sometimes you just have an idea and you want to develop it, and it just escapes you, and that's the worst when you just can't remember. So I tend to definitely write stuff down. And again, Pure Ref is absolutely instrumental to remembering ideas and remembering images, because you can write stuff down. And Figma as well is really, really good to write stuff down and just share it with people. It's really great. I'm trying to go super fast. This is another project of mine. It's another character. Lots going on, lots of Easter eggs. This guy is called Hugo. As you can see, Hugo. I don't know why I did that, but it sounded cool. And I really like the fact that there's a lot going on. There's a lot to look at, and possibly details that you miss at first, and then you come back to it, and yeah, you can spot them. This is a clay render, which is something that I do very often in my processes. So I know the juxtaposition of objects, so I know where to move objects around. And yeah, this is another character I worked on. Oh, and by the way,
Yeah, the quality is so good on all of them, like just consistent. I almost want to see your bad work, you know?
you're never going to see that. I have folders and folders, because I
Yeah.
started doing characters in December 2003. And I approached Cinema 4D because a friend of mine told me that I could do letters in 3D. And I used to do graffiti, so in my younger years. And I've always done sketching, I've always done illustrations. So the fact that I could do it in 3D was really, really alluring to me. So the first characters I did were awful, awful, awful. Probably one day I'll just force myself to share them, but it's normal, of course. It's just I'm sure if you dig up the internet, you'll find some stuff. But it's absolutely normal, and it's part of the process. And it's all the more interesting when you get good at it, when you can see yourself like doing quality stuff,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, see where I started. And this is there's a sense of pride, of course, in developing skills, and that's absolutely something you should be grateful for.
Yeah. It's I think I we chatted about this, but I have this kind of philosophy that is called fail forward fast. And
Absolutely, yeah.
that's all we're essentially doing. We're just failing all the time, going through different iterations after iteration, and then after 10 years you can you eventually you become pretty good, and then you start enjoying your work even more. And
Yeah,
it's also something that I think I saw a question, which is how do you deal with art block? And the answer, at
great
least
question.
like for me, would be you never wait for motivation. A lot of people are like, I'm just not motivated today, I don't want to do it. It's the other way around. Like action will spark motivation, and then motivation will spark more action. So
Yeah,
you just need to start doing something, even if it's bad, which means you have to go through the first few failures fast, and then
Absolutely.
you start doing more banging work after that. So
I totally agree with the fact that you need to fail fast and you need to enjoy it, as bad as it sounds. There's this
as a
quote from
process, yeah.
there's this quote from Jimmy Carr that I always remember is it's not the happiness of pursuit, it's not the pursuit of happiness, it's the happiness of pursuit. It's basically enjoying the process more than
Yeah.
the goal itself.
Exactly.
Because sooner or later, if you apply yourself, you're gonna get to it.
Yeah.
If you follow the process, which has been repeated thousands of times, of course you're going to get to it. You're going to get good at stuff. It's just being happy with the facts that you're spending time, you're developing as a person, you're developing a craft, or you're developing a skill, and that there is good and enjoyment to travel from point A to point B, and what is in between. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
And to answer the question, thank you so much. How do you deal with art block? I kind of force myself when it comes to 3D and sculpting to do sketching when I don't have an idea in mind. So, for example, I just start with let me get rid of the spotlight. I just start with a sphere, and sometimes I end up with experiments that are not really viable for a larger public. They're just for you to enjoy. So it's just a sculpt that you have and you just want to keep there. For example, this one I wanted to do a 3D print of, but hard block is real. It's a really, really time-consuming thing to get over because it could last for weeks. And what do? I mean, unless you have something that pops in your mind, you can't just wait, as you said, for inspiration to come. And I know it's a very abused word, being an artist, but if you are in this field, you are lucky to be an artist. And if you're an artist, you can't afford to just wait for inspiration every day. It's not how it works. Because unfortunately, because if you wait for something to just pop in your mind and it's a brilliant idea and it's worth working on, you're probably gonna have 10 to 20 brilliant ideas in your art career, like banger ideas. The rest of it is just experiments, which are going to come to fruition when it comes to doing the actual thing.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, just force yourself to produce, not in a manic way, but just force yourself to do stuff. Just learn little things along the way. For example, if you do a character, what is something you're not used to do? Is it texturing? Is it creating little stitching on a belt? How could you do that? Is there a method to do it in a faster way? Just look around and don't compare yourself to others.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing. There's a plague. There's social media basically gives you a distorted lens on what other people do. If you look at some accounts, it's like these people work day in and day out on their projects, which is not really the truth. And it makes look everyone as if they are more inspired than you, or just more in terms of artistry than you. Just don't compare constantly yourself and your craft to others, because you'll evolve. And when you get to the pinnacle of your evolution, you're going to be your own product. You're going to be good in your own right and valuable in your own right. But that only comes if you put the hours in. And I'm so happy for that. I'm so happy for that, because we live in a society where basically everyone likes to skip. Well, not everyone, majority of people, especially in our field. And that goes back to generative AI. But a lot of people are using that as a basically way to skip the process. They just look at that. I just thought I have a final product. It's amazing. I'm an artist. It doesn't really work like that, unfortunately. And I think there's a sense of pride in the fact that you can call yourself professional, because that comes with a lot of other assertions like the fact that you put the hours in, like the fact that you got a portfolio, of your own work that stands on its own legs, and that's great. I really love that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do really agree that it's all about the process and you need to enjoy the process. Otherwise, there's no point of doing this. And talking about AI in a lot of ways, it skips that process. It's so funny that mid journey, like the irony is that
Yeah,
it takes away the middle journey,
they
which
did
is
it
the
on purpose. Yeah,
yeah,
Dave
but it's
Alls, the fan.
yeah.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, but that's the most important part. It is the journey, because if you just get the final result out of from a machine, and it's like kind of like gambling, and it's just a slot machine where you're not gonna develop that critical thinking. You're never gonna learn filmmaking if you just use generative AI models. It's just impossible. Like for me, it took 10 years to understand that I can, like, with great confidence, like I can say what is good and bad. Like to develop my taste took 10 years of like constant nonstop working. There's no way you can do that with generative AI. There's just no
Yeah,
way.
yeah, absolutely. And to add insult to injury,
Yeah.
and again, since we are in the have a go at AI spot now, to add the insult to injury, it's also using our work.
Oh yeah.
So
On top
not
of everything,
only,
it's not ethical. Yeah.
yes, not only the person next to you can pretend to be as professional, as proficient as you are, also they're going to do it with your work. So it doesn't, I mean, it's inconceivable to me that some people want to pass that as a solution. It's incredibly, and again, I was reading this, well, I was actually watching this interview with Dave McKean, and he's a very outspoken when it comes to anti-generative AI, you know, artists. And he was saying that this is basically flattening the whole creative industry, because now you don't need to think, you don't need to come up with a concept, an idea. OpenAI is going to do it for you. And David Alts, which is the creator of Midjourney, in an interview to the Financial Times, go look it up because it's still online, to the question, did you pay copyright for all the stuff that you're using? He said, there is no way we can pay copyright for the amount of stuff that we're using because we're literally scraping the internet.
Yeah.
And it's just, and of course, it's a circular program. So OpenAI is based on our stuff. So if we base our stuff on OpenAI, it's going to be so circular, they will get to a point that will basically just regurgitating the same thing and recycling the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's going to just be an all-time low for creativity, first of all, but it's just going to impact so many other fields, music, writing. There's so much at stake for this. Of course, the genie now is out of the bottle, and yeah, hopefully there is something we can do to put a stop to this. We'll see.
Yeah, it is quite crazy. Yeah, I saw from a lot of these AI bros, they were saying, oh, AI is learning just as we are.
Is it?
Like that's their kind of argument. It's like, oh no, AI is just taking a lot of references and then it creates something from it. And they're like, well, it's like what you guys do. You put a lot of references together and then you use that as a, you put it in the mood board and then you create your artwork from it. And they're saying, oh, it's the same way. Do you have like a good argument? Like, why isn't it the same?
I can tell you a little story actually, which, funny enough, mentions exactly the concept that you said. One of the arguments that's been thrown about is, well, two arguments. First of all, it's exactly what artists do. Look at Caravaggio. He looked at people. He painted them. That's exactly what Midjourney is doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
First of all, it's not, but we can go into more into deep with that. But one of the other arguments is that Midjourney is a program just like Photoshop, which is not. And many years ago, I was in a studio that I loved, and we had a meeting with other colleagues of mine. And that was basically the period when Midjourney came up. It was just years ago. And Midjourney was just released, and everyone was super hyped. Everyone was using Midjourney. It was producing images. And I remember saying verbatim, guys, this is bad. This is really bad. They're using our stuff. This is bad. And a colleague of mine just stopped me and said, but this is exactly what Andy Warhol did. And I said, how is that exactly the same thing that Andy Warhol did? Andy Warhol painted the Campbell's soup. He wasn't the owner of Campbell's soup. You are owning someone's work and repurposing it as yours. This is completely different. Plus, Warhol, I'm not a huge fan of Warhol's, but Warhol basically saw stuff through a lens which was proper. I mean, it was just solely Warhol's. You can't replicate that. You have to be that person, that artist. Long story short, that meeting basically ended up with a kind of a shouting match. A year after that meeting, 70% of the people in that meeting were fired because of the strikes in Hollywood, which were triggered by AI as a last straw. Because one of the reasons why the strikes ensued in Hollywood was because actors and writers were obviously upset for OpenAI and stuff. And that's, I mean, it broke my heart, because when you see people that work in your same industry and don't understand the gravity of having something like this, it's just, it breaks your heart. It's just, are we looking at the same thing? I mean, it's just, I don't know. What do you think?
I mean,
sorry for the little rant.
Yeah, no, I actually started writing like a whole list. I had a whole list of these funny anecdotes about how, you know, AI and like, but in a way it's like calling yourself a chef, but you're just heating up a lasagna and then you're serving that in a Michelin restaurant and you're saying, oh yeah, I did this. And you're
Absolutely.
like, no, you were just heating up a lasagna, you know, it's yeah, it's not. Or like, would you ever watch, let's say there was a Formula One race. Would you watch that if you knew that all the drivers were robots?
Yeah, it wouldn't be the same. And again, it's the moral aspect most of all. Carla Ortiz is doing an amazing job at trying to educating people, and a bunch of other people, Greg Rutkowski as well. But it's the moral aspect of it. It's like going in someone's house, stealing their TV, and just leaving. And the day after, they basically chasing you because they want to give you the jewelry and the stuff. It's just people are using OpenAI. They're stealing their stuff to the point that sometimes generates images that have the what do you call it, the Flickr kind of logo and the Getty Images logo, because it just scrapes everything. And copyright laws have been there for a reason for years, but for some reason we've just been taken aback by this shiny object, which is Midjourney. It's just, oh, this is so amazing. It's just using the stuff that we've created. It's
crazy.
I don't get it. Again, this is probably just me being too fixated on the moral aspect of the thing, but it's just I find it incredibly disingenuous to espouse generative AI and just call yourself an artist. It's just
it's very bizarre, to be honest. Is. Yeah. And
by the way, images sorry, go on.
No, I just wish there were more people like that, like what Carla is doing, you know, fighting back, or just like not fighting back, but just putting our foot down. I feel like artists by default, we are very not scared, but just like not outspoken in terms of those things, and that's also problematic. And then you have these big tech companies that are spending billions of dollars into this. It's hard to combat something like that, but
absolutely, and no one wants. I totally understand your point, absolutely, because these are the people that possibly are going to pay your wages. You don't want to upset people. but you have to be objective at some point. Even if we want to forget that this is going to have an impact 40 years down the line, right? Even if we want to forget everything, it's just the steel of it that is not right. I will never go into a museum, take a canvas off a wall and just declare it as mine. This is what this does. And I don't understand it. I just don't understand the fact that not everyone is grasping the gravity of this. It is what it is.
Yep.
If we have other questions, in the meantime, I'm just showing you another character. So a bit of Substance Painter, a bit of ZBrush. This is a piece of furniture that I did for it. It's a throne. And yeah, if there are any questions, or do you reckon we can do a couple of... Oh, hi, Owen. When designing a creature that embodies both beauty and terror is a perfect balance. Thank you so much.
That's a good
What
question.
fundamental design principles or subconscious instincts you rely on to achieve that harmony? That's a very good question.
You do have that weird harmony of beauty and horror. Yeah, that's
Thank
very
you.
true.
I suppose I grew up with artists like Giger, Hans-Rudi Giger, the inventor of Alien. My favorite artist, as I said, is Alphonse Mucha, which was basically the initiator of Art Nouveau. I'm a big fan of Boris Vallejo and Julie Bell. So I suppose having your favorites kind of shapes you as a professional craftsman. I know it sounds a bit too pompous, but yeah, I always cringe a bit when I call myself an artist, because everyone is an artist these days. But let's say a guy that does the job. So I suppose that shapes the way you look at things and produce stuff in a way. So I tend to not be so overtly horror or overtly too nice in my work. When I do characters or when I do assets, I tend to inject a bit of me in them. I like to think that there's a nice kind of balance of all these artists in me, and I don't dare saying that I'm at that level. Of course, I mean, I'm not. I'll never be. But yeah, it's nice to have your favorites and be the blender that collates all those images and just comes up with a rendition, I suppose. Thank you, Owen.
Yeah, I think since we're past the 2-hour mark, if we just go to the portfolio reviews, and then maybe potentially if there's like a lot of demand, we can do part 2.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Shall I grab one at random?
Oh, there's like a lot of them now. Damn. The last time I checked this, it was like 6.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate this.
Yeah.
And there's a few for you as well. Now,
well, let's keep to the character artists in this one then, because there is quite.
Okay.
Oh, there's a lot of FX artists I see now. Yeah, let's stick to the character and sculpting, I think.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much. I already had a look at these, and some of them, pretty much all of them look amazing. So, well done. All right. So I've opened Evie, which I'm not sure is watching this, but there we go. So is this first piece? Let's have a look at the account. Let's see if there's something else. This is nice. It's a nice setup. Again, I'm very, very reticent on telling you how to do stuff or correcting you, but I can tell you how to slightly improve the presentation and make it slightly more punchy and memorable for the person that is going to look at this. And if you're looking for a place in the industry, I suppose that's vital. So yeah, it's been done in Nomad Sculpt, which is great. Nomad Sculpt is great, but it's got limitations. So you can also use ZBrush for students, which is much better, and it's got a lot more options. So I really like the horns. So this one could be used as a base, and you can pack it with details. It's just because it's a bit apparent that you used a brush in ZBrush or just duplicated the same object and tapered it towards the end. And that's something that people that hire usually look at. So, for example, if you can spot the brush strokes, that's a very good sign that you probably could have spent a bit more time on the piece. But all in all, it looks really interesting as a concept. I always say, I mean, oftentimes we post stuff on social media because we want to show things, but I think is sometimes it's the case to just spend a bit more time and have something fully finished. Sorry, I'm a bit too warm. Have something fully finished, and that's definitely the case. There's so much more that you can add on this. For example, have a proper topology, and once you topologized it, you can possibly add tertiary details because it's a very good block out, I would say. But yeah, and obviously in the presentation, I think you can add some more interesting lighting, possibly have a bit of beveling here so it catches the light, and have roughness in the glass as well. There are aesthetic things that you can do to make it a bit more interesting. I mean, since it's a horror kind of subject, you can possibly have a light from the very top, so it casts the light and just have a harsher shadow. It's probably harsher than this, rather than have a spotlight here. But yeah, all in all, well done. Good block out.
Usually it's good to understand where they're coming from as well and what is their objective, because if they're doing it just for fun as a hobby, then I would give different feedback to somebody who's like, oh, I'm a junior but I really want to break into the industry. My feedback would change probably. So
for sure,
I think Evie is in the chat, so maybe you can tell us.
Oh, is it?
What?
Oh, yeah, you're right. All right. So yeah, very good block.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go
ahead. There's a bit of delay. No, I was going to say very good block out, very good sculpt. There is so much more that you can do with this. This could be basically the initial bit of a character. So why not absolutely keep on going? And I can see is possibly shaded, almost poly painted. So it would be nice to see some variation in the texture. And yeah, as I said, probably retopologize it because I can see you use clay build sculpt and clay build brush. So it would be nice to retopologize it and add tertiary details so it stands out. There's a bit of breakup in the specularity. But all in all, well done, man. Really, really good.
Yeah, just a hobbyist. Yep.
Cool. Well, very good for a hobbyist. All right. So, Nahum, hope I didn't mispronounce your name. This is great. Very well done. This is the sort of jam I go for. I suspect this is going to be a miniature. There you go. Yeah, I thought as much. Yeah, this holds up in the miniature as well. I've got a friend that does stuff like this. Not sure he's in the chat, but Jake, if you're looking at this, I'm sure you're going to love it. There are a few things you can improve for sure. Oh, hello. There are a few things you can improve for sure. I love the hacks. The axe is absolutely amazing. This is exactly the sort of stuff I tend to go for. Let me see if I have something of the sort. Yeah, I do actually. So yeah, things like this I absolutely love. So monsters with axe and swords and all sorts of grime and hedgewear, saliva going on. This is stuff that I absolutely live for. So yeah, well done. I know it's weird. You'll never hear it from anyone else. It's stuff I'm going to live for. But yeah, I absolutely love this. Again, there are things that you can improve. For example, this could be UV mapped in a slightly better way because you can see that you use surface noise in ZBrush, and surface noise, if you base it on the UV map, it obviously follows the UV map. So when it gets to the edges, there's a bit of stretching in here. let me see if I can annotate. Yeah, this part here in particular. And that's obviously going to show up when you print it as a miniature. But absolutely great, mate. Really well done. There are parts that can be worked on a bit more. Like, for example, for things like this, I always suggest to use Marvelous Designer because it's super easy to use. Like, it will take you 5 times as much to do it in ZBrush. Then use Marvelous Designer, and the thickness is going to be much more accurate. It's going to look much more like cloth. If you decide to use ZBrush, I suggest you use cloth brushes, which are native to ZBrush, and those are the things that give you the most accurate setup in terms of cloth and simulation. But well done, really great, well done. Do you want to chime in on this or?
No, I like it. I would. Well, again, it depends on, what the outcome was, what the the intention was. I would add probably, because looking at your work, Marco, you do add a lot of these super tiny micro details that I feel like we're missing on the other one. But then again, if you intend to print it, sometimes those micro details don't come through.
Yeah,
sometimes
absolutely.
they do, because I had a printer that was like 0.4 millimeters in detail, so like literally almost every scratch could come through. But yeah, overall great.
Yeah, that's the thing of the printer, isn't it? Like the more minute you go, the more you're going to lose. But absolutely, there are printers that retain stuff. All right, so who's next? Morik, this is incredible. Well done, really well done.
Yeah.
Incredible. That's the sort of stuff I like. This is the sort of stuff I tend to produce as well. In fact, I'm trying not to do a Cthulhu because there are a lot of Cthulhus out there and they're all amazing. So there's no competition. Oh, hello. And I'm sure that I can't beat the competition because there are so many Cthulhus and they're all amazing. But this looks incredible. Again, there are, with the details, you can almost get lost. You can just go on forever. But yeah, one thing I tend to do in my sculpts, I tend to go very wide. So for example, when it comes to cloth and I don't know, wings, I tend to go exaggerated, so super wide. And I love the fact that the arms resemble sculptures of Shukalsky. I can show you actually. So very, very contorted, and again, not anatomically correct, but they look amazing. So obviously an arm and a leg is not supposed to do that, but it's really, really interesting. There's a super interesting documentary about Shukalsky on Netflix. So watch it if you can. But this is incredible. Well done, mate. Very, very good. I really like the scales. I really like the cavities and curvature on the model. So amazing. Well done.
Does he have can we check his portfolio? Because he probably has other work, right?
He does. Let me see.
It's probably a lot of, yeah. Oh, here we go.
Ooh,
a lot of
I love
stuff.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely astonishing, mate. You should be proud of your work. Yeah, as I said, I grew up with Giga. I'm a super fan of his work. He was one of the best artists we had in our century, well, in the previous century actually. But yeah, it's just, I love the fact that you can print it, which is a thing I should be doing, and I can't find time to. But yeah, this is incredible. I really love it. I'm not sure if this is painted. You should probably, yeah, it's hand painted. Yeah, I love the curvature and cavities. The way you painted this is incredible. Well done, man. You should be proud of this. This looks amazing. Oh, you follow me? Oh, sorry. Realize. Okay, let's go to someone else. Avi, we're done. And the next one is Sani. I'm sorry if I butchered your name. I'm super, super sorry. But yeah, it's a reel, which is all the more interesting. If you're in the chat, give us a holler. We'd love to talk. Oh, that's great. Great piece. Yeah, great model. Really, really well done. Yeah, I mean, and this is a personal taste, but I think when I look at portfolios, it makes the piece super interesting. Oh, hello. Hi. It makes the piece super interesting when you add grime and dust and sediment and dirt to the texture. And since you went through the trouble of doing the whole texturing and shading, which looks great, by the way, I think a last final touch there would have added so much to the piece. It would have been to just have a bit of sediment, a bit of dust, because there is so much going on. So it's an engine to expect it to be grimy, expect it to be greasy. And I think, and scratches as well on the metal, it would be a bit of edge wear always goes a long way. But well done. This is a fully finished piece. And again, not sure if this is the case, but if you have your portfolio online in order to find work as a freelancer or a permanent in general work, I think it's always a good thing to show, as you did, retopology and UV mapping. So just give me as many information as you possibly can about what you do, how you do it, what your skills are. Just don't confine yourself to just the final product. It's nice to see that you can do grooming, you can do UV mapping, you can do texturing in multiple programs. And it's nice that you actually cited the programs they use. People always look at this. Yeah, this is great. I mean, topology, we can talk about topology for days. I can tell you this, in some studios, the pipeline is fairly consolidated. So when you send stuff to the farm, there are steps that are taken unbeknownst to you. So for example, your asset is going to have a subdivision tag. So be prepared to have supporting edge loops, which in this case, in the epicanthal fold, you have them. But be prepared that your asset is going to be subdivided unbeknownst to you. So it's going to be squashed. So for example, this part here is going to go like this. So I've noticed in the arm of the other character, you showed the topology at some point, and there is a part that is possibly going to suffer from squashing in the subdivision. And that's because you can add, of course, supporting edge loops, but just be prepared that when you send stuff to the farm, angles like this, for example, if they don't have the proper edge loops, they're going to be squashed. So you're going to lose the shape. But apart from that, amazing work, man. Really, really glad you shared this. And the render is really, really well done as well. This is nice. See, I mean, when you add grime and rust and things like this, see scratches and stuff, it really adds that vibrancy, that physical kind of effect to your piece. Just break up the monotony of a surface is what I'm saying. Yeah, but this is great. Wow, look at that hard surface. I really love these characters. Yeah, really, really nice. And it's great that you show in different stages. Yeah, consistency in the topology is very important as well. So don't have, like, say for example, the character is going to have super high polys. It's going to be super high poly, and the clothing is going to be less defined. Because again, this is going to be squashed. You're going to lose all the angles in a render stages. But apart from that, great work, man. Really, really, really great. I love this. And again, as I said, adding grime and all sorts of foliage kind of adds a lot. And at least what I try to do is I try to tell a story. So just come up with an idea in your head. What's this character doing? What's his backstory? Where is he going? And that makes everything more believable, for sure. But yeah, all in all, be proud. It's an
Yeah,
amazing portfolio. Well done.
that's a good one. Yeah, a lot of different characters going from realistic to super stylized. Uh, that's really cool. You don't see that a lot, right? Like usually people are like fixated to a certain style, which is like super realistic or quite stylized. But to have the range, that's pretty cool. It's like all,
Absolutely.
if you're a musician, it's good to have a range, you know. So you're not just doing, this is these are the five chords that I play, but it's like, oh no, you can play some jazz. That's good, you know.
Absolutely. I totally
Mm,
agree. Yeah. I
mm.
mean, it's granted, some studios specifically want
Yes.
to see that kind of stuff. Now, naming
Hmm.
no names, if you go for a cartoony kind of product,
Mm,
if you open a model like this, which I would value as a really interesting concept, they will shut down the portfolio straight away.
mm.
Um, no worries, man. Pleasure to see your work. I mean, it's such a privilege. It looks amazing. Well done. But yeah, it depends on the studio. Be prepared to have a lot of no's, and that's 90% of the time it's not your fault.
Yeah.
There's a lot of being at the right in the right place at the right time. That's something you can't escape, and it's going to happen throughout your career forever.
Hmm.
I'm afraid. But yeah. All right. So Joshua, thanks for sharing your work. This looks great. Great concept. Super interesting. Again, there's so much more you can do just to make it more appealing to whoever you're going to send your work to. Just create a full character is obviously a good idea, and probably have the character in situ. So, is this a monster? Oh, hi. Sorry, I didn't see the message. The weird demon guy is my work. Yeah, it was really good. Really good, mate. Really
Mm,
good. I love horns. I do horns
mm.
all the time. I mean, probably the 90% of probably this one doesn't have horns, but I can show you characters with horns. Um, 90% of my characters have some sort of, bony kind of structure. And
Mm.
I don't know why I do it like this, to be honest, but I just like it. Yeah, back to your character. So yeah, this looks amazing. This texture is super interesting, and it's probably the most interesting feature here. Is really
Mm.
really cool. I really like dripping stuff. I really like you know the use of saliva and things like this. I do
Hmm.
it a lot as well. But yeah, I'm thinking you can do so much more with this. It's almost like you stopped halfway through. I mean, it's just
Mm.
that you can add arms, and this has got so much potential. Don't be afraid to add details and add something that can add, value to your character. So the rib cage, what's it going to be? Is it going to have stuff inside? You can add emissive things that can shine through the subsurface scattering. For example, since you have used this liquid texture, I'd expect stuff to drip off this surface because it's almost dripping off the whole character. Um, I think I have a few examples of that. Just quickly, I can show you
Mm.
uh, probably this. So there's like is very sweaty and there's
Mm.
saliva dripping off. This is awful. I'm super sorry. I'm showing you this, but for the people that can stomach the sight of this character, you'll see that there's sweat dripping off and there's saliva, mucus. There's a lot of stuff going on, and that's what makes it more interesting. Again, this is just you showcasing what you can do in terms of different disciplines that can be
Mm.
applied on a
Hmm.
on an actual project. But yeah, Joshua, this looks really interesting. I would say keep on going. This is possibly Dynamesh. I'm not 100% sure. I can't know. But this is very, very interesting. I like the backlights they use. Um, I'll just go full body and just make it a full character.
Sweet.
Cool. How are we with time? What do you want to do? Do you want to go until, I don't know, 8, or is it too much?
Well, we've been live for like 2 hours and a half. Uh,
All right.
yeah,
Shall we
we
do another
there's
one and then call it a day?
yeah, I think so. There is still quite a lot of people watching. I think it's almost like 300 people. All
Whoa!
yeah, across all platforms. So that's great. A lot of people
That's a lot of people. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
they stuck with
Uh,
us through the 2 hours and a half,
uh,
but it's good.
they're all friends of mine, all family.
Yeah, all
So
family. Yeah, all
thank
of
you
them.
so much for sticking around. No, but seriously, I'm really honored and really privileged to
Mm.
show my stuff, and I'm super sorry I didn't get to show a lot of other things. I literally had other 17 projects, so there's a lot of stuff. But yeah, hopefully we're gonna do another one of these in the future.
Yeah, I
Make
think.
your voices heard.
Yeah, I think if we do part two, we can do another 2 hours easily. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah,
What do you want to do? Do you want to do one last one and then?
yeah. Let's do one
All
last
right.
one, and then we're gonna tag them like the ones we did this time, and then next time we can continue with the other ones, and maybe the
Absolutely.
list will actually grow for the second
And
webinar.
hey, listen, don't be a stranger. Feel free to hit me up on social medias
Mm.
if you have stuff you I don't know want to share. By all means, I'm always up for it. You've been super gracious, guys. Thanks for having me. All right, completely random. Let's go for Michael Navarro. This is really cool.
Mm.
Nice. All right, so that I suspect this is. I mean, Michael, if you're in the chat, correct me if I'm wrong, but I suspect this is marvelous. If it's not, well done, because it's very tight and very believable as a piece of clothing. But I really love the design. I really love the blue eye samurai kind of reference. I don't know if you were inspired by that, but if you guys don't know that, Blue Eyed Samurai is a lovely,
So good,
yeah,
so good.
I'm sure you know about that, but it's
Mm.
a lovely piece of content that you can find on Netflix. It's absolutely amazing. And this is what reminds me of. It's a mixture between Arcane and Blue Eyed Samurai.
Hmm.
It's really, really great. And well done for the sculpt. It's really, really on point. I really like the composition as well. See, this is what I think is very important when you approach the market. Just show different skills. Show that you can sculpt, you can use marvelous, you can use texturing, you can use shading in a correct way. Because people tend to look at the minutia oftentimes, and that can make the difference from you and someone else.
Mm.
That's very, very important. Um, yeah, nice topology, pretty crisp. I'll just go a tad higher, just as high as the body. Probably not in between that for the cloth and the body, but absolutely amazing. I'm just being super picky because there's nothing to comment on really on this. It's
Hmm.
amazing. I really like the hard surface quality of the body. That
Mm-hmm.
takes a lot of skill. Um, so amazing work and well done on the UV mapping. Looks very fluid and uniform. And yeah, this looks incredible. Well done.
Yeah, I like the emotion in the
Yeah, yeah,
in the facial features. It looks it you feel something when you look at it, which is also like a good thing. Obviously storytelling and all of that, but I think the most important thing is if a piece of art can evoke an emotion from you through
hmm
storytelling or through anything, I think that's a job well done.
absolutely. I can't agree more. It's the fact that we're not just executors of things. We just don't produce stuff willy nilly. It's nice to have the occasion to just, convey a message. And
Hmm.
yeah, absolutely. This is great, man. It's a great piece of portfolio. And you get a follow. How about that? All right. Cool. Look, this has been amazing.
It was good.
Thank you so, so much for having me. Well, I told you this. I love Double Jump Academy. I love what you guys stand for.
Mm.
The quality of tutorials is just off the charts. Um, the things I've seen done on Double Jump is very, very remarkable, and it's unusual as well because you touch on multiple fields. So thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. And yeah, hopefully we will do another one
Yeah, well,
soon.
dude, I really appreciate the words. I mean, yeah, like it's hard. You know,
Very much so.
it's hard. We take a lot of pride in our work. It takes a long time. It's just years and years of brushing and like brushing up on your on our skills, and then teaching is also very difficult, to be honest. It's, you know, because once a project, especially Houdini stuff, there's like thousands of nodes, and then each node does something, and then there's code, and you know, it's technical and artistic. It's hard, but yeah, it would be very awesome if you would join the ranks of our double jump instructors for sure. So we'll see if, you know, if we usually listen to the people. So if the people say yes, then I think we usually honor their request.
Absolutely, yeah,
Yeah,
that would be amazing. Again, the
yeah,
quality is so high, and I do appreciate the skill it takes to remember such a mammoth of a program like Houdini.
hmm,
Houdini is just a universe of things, and I mean the fact that, and again, not everyone in the industry is willing to share.
that too.
Um,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, it's not a usual thing to be so open and say, this is how I do stuff.
hmm,
This is how I've done this thing in that project that you always like and you
hmm,
always see around. So it's really, really nice to have a community, especially in tough times like this, where we're all scattered around and everything is super fragmented. Um, it's definitely a breath of fresh air.
yeah,
So thank you so much, guys.
yeah, dude. We live very close by, so we should grab a drink as
For sure.
ASAP. Yeah.
Let's not disclose the location, but yes.
No, no, yeah, yeah, for sure.
But yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for having me, guys. It means a lot.
Awesome. Well, cheers, Marco. Thank you for your
Cheers.
time and sharing everything with us. All right, cheers, everybody.
Pleasure. Have a lovely
Bye.
day, guys. Thank
Bye. Bye.
you.